My name is Patrick O'Hare, and on behalf of the Friends of Ludington State Park, I'd like to welcome you to this evening's presentation, which will feature Jim Gallie doing a State of the State Park update for all of us. But before we have him get started, I just want to spend a moment or two, or maybe actually a few, in giving you an update on the Friends of the Ludington State Park and some of the activities that will be occurring this summer. Friends of the Ludington State Park, just briefly, is a 501c3. It's a nonprofit entity that was formed back in 1992. And you can read there the mission, but its mission is to support the Ludington State Park. That's the simplest way to think of the Friends group. And as a Friends group, we do operate under a memorandum of understanding with the DNR that covers those activities that we can do with the Ludington State Park and in support of the Ludington State Park. There is a 7-member board, as well as 3 ex officio members, Jim being one, Dan Adams, who I believe is on this evening, and Ellen Burnett is also joining us. They are ex officio members, and Marianne Reiner is a board member that I believe is on the Zoom session this evening as well. So welcome to everyone. Just one second. This is what you get for multitasking when you're doing this. In a normal year, these are some of the activities that you would see us be doing at the state park. The Summer Entertainment Series, Wednesday and Saturday nights, which did not occur last year, but we're pleased to announce that we have scheduled, Ellen has scheduled 18 events starting in mid-June, running to mid-August on Wednesday and Saturday nights. So there'll be a return of the entertainment series. We're not sure whether or not we will be doing our summer bottle and can return because, again, regarding COVID. But you can see, again, some of the other activities. We had our first litter pickup. We had 15 volunteers join that event last week, and we continue to support the state park through funding for tree planting and water safety. There'll be a new sign that Jim might touch on regarding water safety on Lake Michigan. And then we do funding towards park improvements as well. Some of those key capital projects have been the warming hut back in '98, handicapped accessible walkway to the beach, the playground equipment. And then last November, we announced that we were fundraising for a universally accessible kayak and canoe launch. And again, I'm going to let Jim talk about that when he gives the update on the park. But we're pleased as the Friends group this evening to inform you that the kayak canoe launch is fully funded. Because of close to 100 donors, we will also be able to add kayak racks near the launch, create a marked novice trail. We announced that if we exceeded the fundraising goal for the kayak launch, that we would use additional funds from the campaign towards a novice trail that will go north. Right now, if you're familiar, with the current kayak canoe trail, it goes south and it has some portages. We're going to install signage for a novice trail to the north. In addition, we'll do water safety signage around the kayak canoe launch. About 3 weeks ago, the Friends of the Ludington State Park at its board meeting approved 2 new activities in terms of projects, one being the track chair. And I don't know if you're familiar with these, but they now are in place in about 6 of the state parks and Sleeping Bear Dunes National Seashore. The Friends group up at Sleeping Bear Dunes has actually 2 track chairs, and these are available on a reservation basis and loaned out. And we've submitted a grant request for a Seacoast and Chroma viewer. And you might be looking at that photo thinking, okay, I've used these kind of viewers in the past. But Chroma supports individuals that are colorblind, and 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women are colorblind. And about 10 years ago, some new technology came out that's now been adapted for these viewers. And so we've applied for a grant, which we hope to get, and we'll be deploying one of these viewers within the Ludington State Park. The track chair requires us to do funding. It's about a $13,000 project. The Friends Group allocated $5,000 of current funding towards the track chair, and so we need to raise an additional $8,000 in order to do this project, and we're hopeful that we will be able to do so over the next year. If you'd like more information on either one of these projects, you can go to the website under Donate tab, and there are pages with links to videos on both of these technologies. So with that background in terms of the Friends Group, it's my privilege as a board member of the Friends of Ludington State Park to introduce Jim Gallie, the park manager. Jim's been with the park for 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, Jim, and he will provide an update on the state of the state park. So I will stop sharing, Jim, and allow you to share your screen.
Hey, thanks, Patrick. I really appreciate the opportunity to have this event. For those of you who are not aware, with the COVID pandemic and our inability to meet, the board and the Friends of Ludington State Park decided to host these webinars that we would have, I would say, almost every 2 to 3 weeks. It's been a great opportunity to reach out to the Friends Group members, make some connections there, share some of the major issues that we are dealing with in parks, and not just at Ludington State Park, but parks as a whole. So I do want to thank you, Patrick, for setting these up. Kind of look at this as, in the past, if you've been to Ludington State Park, ever camped there, we had what was variably called the coffee with the manager or coffee with the staff, depending on who was there. It was a chance for our visitors to sit down around a campfire, around a picnic table, and talk about what's happening at the park, how the season has been going, how the previous season went, and what are some of the big improvements that are taking place at the park. So kind of look at this as a replacement for that this year. We were unable to do the coffee with the staff last year due to the COVID pandemic. This is going to hopefully provide some of that same sort of information and that some of that same interaction. Those of us at the park really do appreciate the feedback that we get from our visitors. It helps us kind of keep our finger on the pulse of what our visitors would like to see, and hopefully lets you know why we're shutting down campgrounds in the middle of October, as we might be doing this upcoming fall. So, but before I get started on this, we do have a guest that's going to be joining us. I would like to introduce you to her. She hopefully will be able to chime in a little bit later in this program when we get to one of the subjects. And if you joined us for our Hemlock Woolly Adelgid program with Danny McGarry, Kathy Winchesky, and Heidi Fry a few weeks ago, you may have heard Heidi mention her name, but Emily Leslie was recently hired as our Southwest Michigan Natural Resources Steward. She works with a lot of volunteers throughout Southwest Michigan at the parks, doing invasive species cleanup and other stewardship activities. So Emily, if you would, please just introduce yourself, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and then if you can hang by for when we get to the HWA slide, you can talk about that and some other activities you might be involved with.
Yeah, hi, I'm having an issue with my camera right now. I'll hopefully fix it by the second slide, but like Jim said, I'm Emily Leslie. I'm the new Southwest Natural Resource Steward. If you've ever worked with Heidi Fry in the past, I've taken over her role. Just getting started, and while you guys aren't really in the South, you're kind of like a bonus park that I get to work on. I love Ludington, and I get to be there because you guys are such an active Friends group. I'm planning on doing some work days there in June, so if you have any input on times or days of the week that has happened in the past or that your group already has meetings, definitely let me know. I'll drop my contact info in the chat, and yeah, I'll stick around for the slides later on.
Thanks, Emily. So I do have to give a little bit of a warning. It's allergy season for me with the spring, so I may occasionally have to take a sip of water or take a pause. But if you work with me, that's Jim. So I appreciate your patience there. Normally, if we were doing a coffee with a staff, I would not work with these first few slides. The assumption is if you're camping here, we probably know that you know the park a little bit, but I'm not going to make that assumption now. So I'm going to start off with just a brief introduction of the park, talk about some of its attributes, some of the benefits that we have here that we get to take place as workers, employees, visitors, and residents. And then also from there, I'll move on to talk about some of our, a little bit of a recap of last year, some of the not so great things that happened last year besides the COVID pandemic. And then we'll move on to some of the projects that are going to be occurring in the future. After a couple of these sections, I'll probably stop and see if there are any questions in the chat, or if someone wants to raise their hand and ask a question. I'll do my best to answer them. Just understand that when it comes to this upcoming season with so many uncertainties about where we're going to be with regards to COVID, there's going to be a lot of I'm not really sure kind of answers for some of the topics. Like Patrick mentioned, we're hoping to move forward with the guest presenter series, but if things change in the world with regards to the pandemic, there's a chance we may have to cancel that. Same with the bottles and cans and other programs. So just keep that in mind if you do have any questions. There's definitely some uncertainty there. So Ludington State Park is located on the east shore of Michigan, east shore of Lake Michigan, west shore of Michigan. We're located about 4 hours north of Chicago, maybe an hour and a half from Grand Rapids. It's a 5,300 acre park located on Big Sobble Point. If you look at this area map of Ludington, you can see we're located where it says Park Office, approximately 4 miles along the shoreline north of the city of Ludington. 7-minute drive, I think, to get to the park office, 10-minute drive or so. But in addition to Ludington State Park, I do just want to point out that we administer a couple of other locations in the Mason County area that you may not be aware of. And those are primarily access sites. So Hackert Lake, or Crystal Lake as it's sometimes called, there's a boating access site that we administer. The US 31 site at the Twin Bridges on the Pure Marquette River is another location that we administer. Plinus Lake and St. Mary's Lake down towards the south end of the county as well. We also maintain the wildlife lookout on the north side of the Pure Marquette River on Old 31. We are responsible too for some of the cleanup on what was, I think, sometimes called Peter Pan Land, Kings Canyon area, I've heard it called as well, right, the big bluffs right along Lake Michigan. So, if you head to one of those sites and you see something that you think needs to be addressed, don't hesitate to reach out to the park. We can get someone out there and address that issue. So, like I said, we're on the shoreline of Lake Michigan. The biggest draw is probably the 7 miles of shoreline that we have along the lake. We're fortunate that 3 miles of that is adjacent to M116, which makes it quite accessible. And then the remaining 4 miles, if you want to get away, get a little bit of a pristine slice of beach to the north, it's just however far you feel like going, and you can get to a more secluded area. We have a designated beach as well, closer to the entrance, which is quite popular. We also have 5 miles of shoreline on Hamlin Lake. It may not seem that way, but the park heads to the north for a few miles on Hamlin Lake up to, if you've been here before, you'll see some large sand dunes to the north from the water. We run up to there. And then to the south, in an area that's a little bit more secluded, a little more remote, and full of wetlands, large pines, hemlocks, along our canoe trail, so that totals 5 miles of shoreline. And then, bisecting the park almost, it seems like at the midpoint between the north and south end, is the last mile of the Big Sobble River. It empties out of Hamlin Lake at the Hamlin Dam, flows through the park and exits into Lake Michigan. Great place for recreation, paddling. In the fall, it's a popular spot for fishing, a lot of salmon fishing there. It seems to be one of the few places in Mason County where it doesn't seem to freeze over. I mean, you will get ice on it, but there's usually some open water, so it makes it a great place for waterfowl viewing in the winter months. And then in the summer months, it's almost wall to wall with tubes. So people love to flow down the lazy river. We're also home, one of the big draws, one of the things that it really makes Ludington State Park so special is the sand dunes. And it's a combination of open dunes, interdunal wetlands. We got some of the secondary complex dunes, dunes that have kind of stabilized over time and have had forests that have grown on those. And then jack pine barrens. And so this Ludington Dunes complex, which is combined with Nordhaus Dunes, which is the wilderness area to the north, is, I believe, the largest interdunal wetland type sand dune environment in the world. We're really, really happy that we have this here, and very thankful that our predecessors had the foresight to protect this beautiful area. So people, come to Ludington State Park for a lot of different things, but some of the highlights at the park, are obviously the beaches. We've got, the 7 miles of beach on Lake Michigan. Almost all of that is easily accessible. But you can find your slice of beach depending on what you're looking for. Close to the beach house, if you're interested in a more developed type area, we've got a designated swim beach with buoys. There's a gift shop and a snack shop in the beach house. We've actually installed a dog beach a few years ago, which is just south of the designated beach near the Big Sauble River mouth. Great place to hang out, great place to watch sunsets from the deck of the beach house. And then if you're interested in something that's a little safer and probably a little more laid back, Hamlin Lake is a very popular spot. We've got a swim beach there, and it tends to be really popular with families. The water warms up a lot earlier than Lake Michigan. It's a little shallower, and you don't worry about the waves. You're not going to experience those big waves that you might on Lake Michigan. So it's a bit safer, and it's become even more popular recently. We've added some accessible picnic pads, and then with the help of the Friends group, we added the wonderful playground in 2018. So Hamlin Lake's really becoming a wonderful place to hang out. Always has been, but we're trying to make it even better. Ludington State Park has a lot of history. Alan, about a month ago, did a program about the history of this area. The logging legacy looms large around here. The dam is located at the site of the former logging village of Hamlin, which was built by Charles Mears in the mid to late 1800s. He actually built the dam in 1888. It was the first of 3 dams that have been on that site, the previous 2 having been washed out at certain times, the one in 1912 actually eliminating the city of the town of Hamlin. He also was responsible for creating the town of Lincoln, which is a little bit south of here on Lincoln Lake at what is now Epworth Heights. But I think even more so, historically, more so prominent than, the community of Hamlin is the Big Sauble Point Lighthouse. This lighthouse was built in 1876. It was in a response to, the number of shipwrecks that occurred on Big Sauble Point. The shipping lanes then, as they do today, actually came quite close to Big Sauble Point. So they had a number of shipwrecks there. And in 1876, they installed the lighthouse. They also installed a Coast Guard station about a mile south of there to help rescue any of the shipwrecks that ran aground. Today, you can still visit the Big Sauble Point Lighthouse. If you feel up to it, you can climb. There's 130 stairs to get to the top. There's a gift shop and a small museum talking about the history of the lighthouse. It does take a little bit of planning to get there because it's about 1.5 miles to almost 2 miles to walk out there from any of the parking areas. So, you want to prepare, get an early start on your way out there before it gets too hot and sunny. Enjoy your time out there. There is a small fee to climb the tower. But if you don't feel that you can make that hike, the Sauble Point Lighthouse Keepers Association schedules 6 different days throughout the summer months where you can actually pay a small fee to ride a bus out there. And they'll run those buses continuously. They have 2 of them running just nonstop, taking people from the park headquarters out to the lighthouse so you get a chance to visit that point. Hamlin Dam, like I mentioned, that was the most recent version was built, I guess, in 1913 after the 1912 dam washed out. This maintains the water levels in Hamlin. Hamlin Lake itself. Hamlin Lake's 5,000 acres. It's maintained by the dam, as high as it is. We actually control the water levels on Hamlin Lake. We have guidelines for how we do that. But during the summer months, the lake level is approximately 2 miles higher than the winter months when we draw the lake down. And that was done because it was an agreement when the state originally acquired the dam that we were to always draw it down during the winter months to prevent damage to seawalls and the structures around Hamlin Lake from the ice flows. Hamlin Lake's a long lake with a lot of fetch. The wind can push a lot of the ice around on the lake and cause damage, so we maintain that. This year, it's been a little bit slow for bringing the water levels up. We are at about, for January, February, and March, we've received approximately half of the amount of rainfall that we typically would. And so we're still not up to the summer lake levels, which is pretty late in the year for that to be the case, but we're getting close. And then, the hiking trails, ski trails, biking trails, that's, one of the big draws of this park. We've got over 25 miles of trails, if you count some of the probably non-official social trails in the south end of the park, probably pushing up closer to 30 or more miles of trails. Take you through all kinds of different environments, beautiful forests, the open dunes, a lot of wetlands along the Hamlin Lake side, and you can also use the beach for hiking as well. So Ludington State Park is the most popular campground, or I should say the most popular state park when it comes to camping numbers in the state of Michigan, by far. We have 375 campsites in the park. We take reservations 6 months in advance, and I really, really recommend that if you do want to camp here, you get on the phone or the computer 6 months prior to, because it can be tough, especially if you're looking at staying for any length of time, to get a reservation at the park. I hear from a lot of visitors it's a source of frustration. Unfortunately, it's a kind of a supply and demand thing. Ludington State Park has a lot of vertical topography. We don't have a lot of room for building out campgrounds. We've used up pretty much all the space that we can that's flat for camping, and people really do enjoy the park. So, my only advice is, be persistent, be flexible, be willing to call back and check, and maybe not take the perfect site or for as long as you want. Visitors, most of the people that we've gotten to know over the years, they get back every year. It just takes a little bit of work to do that. And it's getting even more difficult with the increase in outdoor recreation because of COVID. We've seen, our visitation skyrocket. We broke records last year for the attendance that we had at the park. And we just learned recently that, camping reservations across the state are up 30% over last year. So, Michigan and the surrounding states, our visitors are wanting to get outside, get out and recreate, and it's making it a little bit more difficult to get campsites. So just a brief rundown on the campgrounds. We've got 3 modern campgrounds. The Pines Campground, which is in the upper left, is nearest to Lake Michigan. Beechwood Campground on the bottom is closest to Hamlin Lake, and then about midway between the two is the Cedar Campground. It's located where the old Cedar picnic area was located. This is probably the site that accommodates larger recreational vehicles better than Pines for sure, and a lot of the front of Beechwood. The sites were designed so they're a little bit larger, and unfortunately, one of our first really bad forest health issues, with regards to invasive species was the emerald ash borer. That came through and eliminated a lot of the ash trees that were in the Cedar Campground. So it's fairly open, it's fairly sunny, big sites. We're trying to reforest it, but it takes time. So if you're looking for a little more sun and space, Cedar's the place to be. Now, if you're more into the primitive vibe, you don't want to be next to other campers, your best bet is to look at staying at the Jack Pine campsites. Those are a mile hike out into the dunes north of the park headquarters. There's only 10 sites there. They're nestled in a Jack Pine barren forest. There's a water pump and some vault toilets there, but it is a rustic kind of primitive experience. And if, the modern campgrounds aren't modern enough, then you can always look at renting out one of the mini cabins that we have at the park. We've got 3 of those, 1 in each campground, and those come with heat and electricity, tables, microwave, refrigerators, and bedding, and beds. You'll have to bring your own bedding for that, but they tend to be a little bit more of a modern upgrade. So I'll finish up with these activities, and then we'll just take a quick break before moving on. Why do people come to Ludington State Park? I mean, if you've been here before, it's a really, really impressive place. The hiking is phenomenal. Such a variety of hiking trails, whether through the open dunes, the wetlands, the forests, along the lakes. Boating and paddling, you can't ask for a better place. Even if you have power boats, we've got places where you can dock those. We've got a boat launch at the park itself. If you're into kayaking, our concessionaire rents out kayaks. We're home to, I think, one of the only actually designated canoe trails in a state park that was created by the Friends of Ludington State Park back in the early 90s. It winds about 4 miles through some of the wetlands to the south end of Hamlin Lake. If you're a little more ambitious, have the skill level and the conditions are right, Paddling out on Lake Michigan in a sea kayak is quite the experience as well. So, the paddling opportunities and the boating opportunities are phenomenal. We don't have any mountain bike trails in the park, but our paved bike paths are probably the best way to get around the park to avoid the congestion of vehicles. They connect all of the campgrounds, come close to connecting you to Lake Michigan, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then also, if you don't feel like hiking out to the Big Sable Point Lighthouse, you can bike out there as well. Just keep in mind that it is a gravel road, gets a lot of sand blowing on it. It can make for a difficult bike ride out there. So just be aware of that. And then fishing, I think most of our visitors know that it's quite the hot spot for fishing. Each year, the local Charter Boat Association plants a certain number of salmon. Over the past few years, they've been planting about 60 to 70,000 coho salmon in the river. And then they return after a few years and have provided us with a nice salmon run. So the fishing can be really good here. In the past, it was even more so. They planted very large numbers of Chinook salmon. And we were the last, I think the last river in the area to ban snagging. And that's been about 30 years ago. It's changed a little bit, but the fishing opportunities are still good. And then a lot of people don't realize this, but Ludington State Park is open to hunting, during the established seasons. We do not allow hunting in the areas like right around the heavily used day use areas, but we do allow hunting to the north end of the park and the south end of the park. And we do see a lot of deer come out of here. People tell us stories about some of the big 8 points that they'll get from the north. We know we've got squirrel hunters as well. So that is something to be aware of. We post signs on the trails letting you know when you've crossed into the hunting zone. So if you're a non-hunter, just don't be surprised by that sign. During any of the hunting seasons, we recommend that you wear some bright colors, especially during deer season. Wear hunter orange if you're hiking out in the areas where hunting is allowed. So, we're part of Parks and Rec Division, but we do work at Ludington State Park with some of our friends from the Marketing and Outreach Division, which probably the most well-known is Alan Wernett. He's our park interpreter. He's been here for 21 years now, and he's responsible for, a lot of our outdoor programs, our educational programs with our visitors. But you may not be aware of this too. He also reaches out to a lot of school groups in the area, and he's willing in a non-COVID year to go out into the community, meet with schools. He loves having students come for field trips in the park, pond studies, dune studies, history walks. He likes to take groups out to the lighthouse. So if you're an educator, you're interested in partnering with the state park, give us a call. We can set you up with Alan. He'd love to have you out, for one of his programs. And then, Patrick mentioned this at the beginning. We do have some special programs. Most of those we do partner with the Friends of Ludington State Park on. A couple times a week, we either have musical guests at the Parks Amphitheater or at the Beach House. We have educational programs like our Birds of Prey program or our reptile programs at the amphitheater or the Beach House as well. And then sometimes we partner with other organizations like the National Turkey Association. They come out and do like some educational talks about turkeys and set up a shooting gallery for people to shoot BB guns. That's something to always keep an eye on. We have a park newspaper that's available when you arrive at the park, and we post these programs on our website. So, as soon as you get here, grab the newspaper, look at the schedule. You might have something really interesting taking place while you're here. And then, this is one of the things where, I don't know if people always know this or not, but we're open year round. And we're open year round for camping as well as our different recreational opportunities. Alan, every weekend during the winter months, does guided snowshoe hikes through the park. Every other weekend, he does nighttime guided hikes through the park. And then on those alternate weekends when he's not doing that, we have lantern lit snowshoe hikes where the Friends group will assist with handing out, the 60 pairs of snowshoes that we have free of charge for people to have the opportunity to try them out, feel what it's like to walk through the woods in the dark through the lanterns. It's a great time. We have hot cocoa and cider at the fire circle. Alan's usually there to answer questions about the park. So we recommend, keep an eye on the calendar this upcoming winter to see if we're going to be doing this. We're really looking forward to bringing it back because winter is it's a beautiful time at Ludington State Park. So, you know, this happens, you know, and all these, you know, things that we're able to do at the park and some of the things that I'm going to talk about later, you know, a lot of this happens because we have such a phenomenal park staff here. We've got 12 full-time, I should say 12 permanent employees that work here. 5 of us are full-time, the remaining 7 are seasonal. And then in the summer months, we hire, you know, 25 additional summer rangers to work the months. And they're usually the people that you're probably going to see at the entrance booth, see out cleaning the restrooms, you know, doing a lot of the maintenance in the park. And I just want to give a shout out to our park staff here. They make working here a joy, and they provide just a great experience, I think, for our visitors. And then I want to mention some of our partners, you know, because it takes a lot for us working at this park to maintain it. And we've got a lot of great partners that help us with it. The Hamlin Lake Preservation Society and the Big Sauble River watershed groups, you know, they've done a lot for us recently on erosion control efforts. They funded 2 kind of demonstration projects out along the island trail. You'll see, I wish I had a picture of it before that. It's off on the left there. They just did amazing work on restoring that habitat. They're also going to be helping us with some erosion control along the Big Sauble River this upcoming year, probably later into the fall and winter. We've been seeing a lot of erosion, especially with the higher water levels along the shoreline. And some of those spots are getting a little close to our roads and infrastructure. So they're going to help us with that. The Sauble Point Lighthouse Keepers Association manages 4 different lighthouses along Lake Michigan. They manage the White Lake Lighthouse, the Little Sauble Point Lighthouse at Silver Lake State Park, the Ludington Pier Lighthouse, and Big Sauble Point Lighthouse. They work with their keeper program where keepers are able to stay out at the Big Sauble Point Lighthouse for a 2-week time period, and then they rotate through staffing the lighthouse. We also have campground hosts that work in the park. They have a campsite in the Cedar campground across from the store. They help us with just, you know, keeping an eye on the park, being there for questions and answers, tidying up restrooms, and holding activities for kids and families. We've also, you know, just a couple other groups that we work with. We work with our local ESD through the Michigan Rehabilitative Services Program, where we have a crew that comes in and they work half a day, 4 days a week, helping us maintain the park. You'll often see them out along the beaches and on the trails. And they've been known to jump into some piles of Japanese barberry and help us remove that as well. So it's a great crew to have. Dan Adams has been working with them for, I want to say, maybe 7 or 8 years at the park. Real joy to work with. And then the piping plover program, you know, we have some plover monitors through the Department of Natural Resources, but we also work closely with the University of Minnesota and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on the plover monitoring program. Back in the, I guess, the good old days of the program, when the lake levels were low, we would have up to 7 different breeding pairs of piping plovers in the park. Now, with the lake levels as high as they are, the habitat isn't as nice. And so we've lost a lot of the breeding pairs. Last year was the first year in a long time we did not have any. Population is still healthy in the Great Lakes region. It's just they're moving to better habitat. And then we also work with the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission. They are out of the Muskegon area, and they've partnered with us for a lot of tree plantings. If you've seen a lot of small tamaracks that have arrived recently and some cedars, those came from that organization, and we're hoping to partner with them in the future to help reforest the park as the forest ages. So. And then, you know, the biggest one, and the reason we're here right now, is the Friends of Ludington State Park. You know, they started off in the early 90s. They do so much for us, you know, with regards to fundraising. I mean, a lot of times with recreational, you know, projects that we would like the playgrounds, they kind of fall to the wayside because we also have to make sure that our restrooms work and our drain systems work. The unglamorous stuff, you know, works. And so it's partnering with groups like the Friends and our community that, you know, helped raise this money that allowed us to have the accessible playground that we had. They've worked with the handicap accessible walkway down on Lake Michigan. We can always rely on, you know, Bob to turn out volunteers to help us with invasive species cleanup. There's in the upper left is a picture of Bob and think Erica Carmasol, ripping out Japanese barberry, the highway cleanup, and, of course, the programs as well. So really excited to work with them, painting the lines in the park, anything we ask, it seems like the Friends Group is willing to jump out there and give us a hand. And so it's a great organization to have. And I want to thank the Friends Board and all of the volunteers and all the members that have helped with all of these projects. So I guess that's kind of a break point, Patrick. I don't know if we have any questions or if anyone wants to ask any questions, just the general questions about the park, or we can also, if there aren't any, we can hold off at the end of the program and do the same.
I think people are probably anxious to hear updates.
All right.
Jotting myself notes to ask you, like, is the Jack Pine going to be open because of the water level and so forth? But there's some of that you might be just covering in the course of your 2021 update.
Okay. If that's the case, I will move forward. We'll talk a little bit about 2020. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but some of the things that we faced last year are going to come up in some of the updates for this upcoming year. So, I don't think I need to surprise anyone by saying it was a strange year last year, and I think it's probably going to be the same this upcoming year. The fact that COVID hit us, at the beginning of the season resulted in us opening a lot later than we expected. Despite that, we still, at least broke our record for attendance, hitting right around 900,000 people. Typically, we're in the 825,000 person visitation. It was a challenge. Our summer staff faced a lot of challenges working with our visitors. I'm sure our visitors faced a lot of challenges coming to the park as well. Social distancing was very difficult with so many people here. Masks are required in all the buildings, and we had to kind of accommodate and alter some of our infrastructure with face masks and the like, so that we could serve our visitors. And despite that, people still came. It was crazy how busy it was last year. All of us noticed it, all of us felt it. But it really, I think, was inspiring for us to see that, during a time where, there's a lot of difficulty going on in the world, that we were still a place where people could get out and recreate, still have a good time. And so we were happy that we were here for that. One of the big challenges we saw last year, and it's going to tie over a little bit into this, some of the slides a little bit later, is the rising lake levels. I just grabbed a quick snippet of a graph from 2011 to this current year, and you can see the increase that came up there. 2013, the lake levels were so low that we could drive excavators out in front of the big Salvo Point Lighthouse to help work on some of the seawall there. Right now, it's 7 feet deep in front of that. It's just amazing how much the water came up and how quickly. And because that water came up so much, and because the campground is so close to Lake Michigan, there's a tie-in between the groundwater levels that we see and the levels of Lake Michigan. So we saw the groundwater levels come up a lot, and that made it difficult for us to handle any of the rain events that we had. So this last year was a year of erosion. It was a year of flooding. I mean, if you were a visitor here and you were here when it rained, I'm sorry, because you were probably flooded out at some point. The water just didn't have anywhere to go. We were trying to pump it into the dunes with pumps at times, but there's really just no place to go. We had to shut down the Jack Pine campground because of it, just because we couldn't move the campsites anymore. We just had no place to go with it. So hopefully, it sounds like it's pretty positive so far. Lake levels right now are down 14 inches from where they were at the same time last year. Predictions are it's going to be, a lot better than it was last year. But that doesn't mean we're going to not try to address some of those concerns. This is just an example of, the impact of the lake levels. You can see right here, if you can follow my arrow, just above the helicopter wing is a large pipe that's a large piece of the former Dow Chemical brine line. Used to run from Dow Chemical in Ludington north, about 2 miles north of the Big Salvo Point Lighthouse, and emptied out into Lake Michigan, dumped the excess brine out into Lake Michigan. This is obviously, quite some years ago in the 70s. Well, this was buried and abandoned in place, and now the high erosion is actually eroding into the dunes and exposing this. So occasionally, more so than we had in the past, we're having to address this, hiring a contractor to come out here and remove these large sections of pipe. So if you do run across a big piece of pipe, if you're out hiking along, the lake shore, we know about it, and we're gonna address it. But we just try to do that during the off season. So we'll be removing some of those sections. And this is a section for Emily. We knew this was coming. It wasn't a big surprise to us because hemlock woolly adelgid has been in Michigan for a few years now, and it's slowly been working its way up the shoreline. And it was identified in Ludington State Park this last fall. Emily, can I pass it over to you to maybe talk a little bit about hemlock woolly adelgid? Because not everyone may have attended the session a few weeks ago, and talk about what we're doing in Ludington for it.
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. So a little bit of my background, I was on the HWA crew based out of Muskegon State Park. Those are the people who found it in your park. I was on that crew for about 2 years. I ended in 2019. So I surveyed the whole park of Ludington, but at that time we hadn't found it. They found it this year just on a few trees, and yours are not super heavily infested as far as I know. And they had a really rapid response. They found it and they were able to begin the chemical treatments almost right away, which is really good for containing the infestation to those trees. If you're not familiar with hemlock woolly adelgid, you can see that top black arrow is pointing to it. It's a little tiny insect that kind of burrows into the tree, and it feeds on the sap, and it will kill the tree. When a tree is infected, if it's untreated, it's 100% mortality rate. But now that we know it's there, we have responded. And after we treat the tree with the chemical, that chemical is going to stay within the tree for 7 years. In other parks, it's been 100% treatment of every hemlock tree. If you're out in the park at Ludington, there's a lot of hemlocks. They're hard to get to. We've been to all of them for surveying. I'm not 100% sure of what their treatment plan is, if they just plan to do the infested areas this upcoming treatment season, which will be the summer, and then continue surveying. It's a little bit, shocking almost that we found it there. We had hoped that the colder temperatures, with you guys being a more northern park, wouldn't allow for the adelgid to survive, but there's hope. We've responded really quickly. I know they have it in sleeping bear as well. So something that everyone up north is kind of working on together now.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, that's the stuff of nightmares when you look at where the actual insect is, and then you see that its mouthpiece moves that far. Terrifying. But I'm glad that we have had the AmeriCorps team in here doing the surveying. They're surveying in all kinds of weather, and done a great job. And thanks so much for finding this, identifying it, and treating it. Okay, so I'm going to move in to talk about some of the big ticket projects that we have coming up. Ludington has been pretty fortunate, with getting a lot of projects done. Unfortunately, they haven't been the most glamorous projects lately. I think we've replaced 4 drain fields in, maybe the last 6 years. That's not typically what we like to see happen. But they're a necessity. We can't operate the buildings without them, and the restrooms without them, and without them, we can't have a campground. But, it's been a few years since we've had the beach house restoration in 2013. And these things are kind of cyclical. There are 103 different state parks in the state park system. There's a limited pot of money. And we rely on our planners and our planning section, to evaluate our needs throughout the park. We always make our pitch for, we think we really need it more than anyone else. But, they've got a good idea of what's needed throughout the park. So, sometimes it seems like we haven't had a lot of projects happening lately, but we have. It's just they haven't been the most glamorous. But I think some things are going to change pretty soon. We're up for a busy few years. So this is a photo. I'm hoping it'll work. This shows the impact of some of the lake levels you can see there that, with the lake level as high as it is, the riprap that's along that shoreline just isn't doing what it's supposed to, which is to, break those waves, dissipate that energy. What's happening is it's blasting up over the seawall, and it's eroding a lot of the soil away on the backside of that seawall, which concerns us because, the seawall is only so deep. It requires a lot of that soil to stay stable. And so we wanted to make sure that, that structure is in good shape. There was some original concern because we had water coming into the basement of the lighthouse residence. Is the lighthouse under any threat or not? We had some specialists come in and take a look at that. They're not concerned at all about the lighthouse. It's been here for a long time. The way it was built is very solid, has a very deep base, very stable. But again, we just want to make sure that we do protect, the area around it. So this fall, there's going to be some work being done out at the lighthouse, shoring up this seawall, adding riprap, putting a new cap on there that's been washed away, and doing some more work, maybe extending that seawall a little bit further to the east. Because if you take a look at this photo here, this shows the erosion that has disappeared. This dune is roughly 20 feet tall or so, and up until the last couple of years, this dune came out and covered up most of this area. This was all this big foredune, and with all of the big storms we've been having lately, it's wiped all of this stuff away, and now it's eroding behind. So this fall, you're going to see some pretty big repairs taking place out at the Big Sable Point Lighthouse. Beechwood Campground's getting some love this year. It's a great campground right on Lost Lake and Hanlon Lake. Just a beautiful forest in there, some wonderful beech trees. It's also home to a couple of our oldest bathroom buildings and probably some of our roughest bathroom buildings. We call it, front and back Beechwood, or you call it north and south Beechwood. But these two buildings were both put in the, I think the late 50s or early 60s. And, their time has come to change. They're beautiful buildings. They were designed with that same kind of slumping mortar that the Lake Michigan Beach House was built with, but they're nowhere near accessible, for anyone with a disability. Back Beechwood has multiple flights of stairs in there. I don't know, it's probably one of the few bathrooms that still has a urinal, a trough type urinal in there. So, we're going to upgrade that area. And then also front Beechwood, the same, it doesn't have the steps in there, but it's a much older building and needs some upgrading. So we're able to actually get both of these buildings done at the same time. So we don't have as big of an impact in the campground, because we're going to have to shut it down for a little bit. Our plan is to shut down on October 10th of this upcoming year. We want to get through at least those first couple of nice fall weekends in October, but just because of the needs, for our contractors, we're going to have to shut the campground down a little bit early. And this is kind of what we're looking at as a replacement style building. Some years ago, we got together, staff from all over the state, our planners, put our brains together and tried to figure out, if we look at all the different buildings and all the different, textures and all of the different amenities, features, what would we say is a perfect kind of building? And, we came up with this as what we call our prototype building now. This one was built in Muskegon State Park just this last year. Had a chance to tour it. It's a really nice, solid building. It has some great little features to it. This is a version at Wilderness State Park that was put in just recently. So, we can style them a little bit to fit with the location, to make it fit within the campgrounds. But I think we're going to be going with something along these lines. And then we are also working at the same time on the Beechwood electrical system. The electrical system at the front part of the park was replaced not too long ago. It actually has 50 amp service in it. But the section at the northern two loops, it was designed where, one pedestal served 4 different campsites. They weren't put in great locations, and just they weren't designed to stand up to the power needs of the campers and the recreational vehicles that we have today. This is a sample of one of our pedestals, and this is not some rare occurrence. This is something that we're often having to deal with, is replacing burnt parts, stuff that's shorted out. So we're really looking forward to being able to replace that with a new system. With we'll have a quarter of the sites with 50 amp service. We're going to upgrade some of the campsites, to become handicap accessible, and each campsite will have its own pedestal, so you won't have to connect 4 different extension cords just to get to where you want to plug in. So we're really excited about this, and again, we're trying to tie this in to the same time frame that we are replacing the restroom buildings. So just know that October 10th, we're shutting down the Beechwood Campground. If you can't get reservations later in the fall, that's the reason why. We still have cedar, we still have pines for a while into this next season. And then it probably is just because, we never know what the weather is going to be like during the winter months and how that impacts the construction. There's a chance we may have to extend that closure a ways into the spring and maybe even into June, depending on, the severity of the winter weather this year. So just something to keep in mind, if next year, you're calling for reservations in November and you're not able to get anything in Beechwood, it just could be because we are not ready to open it up. This one's probably a little bit further down the line, but it is something that we're preparing for, and that's to replace the existing Skyline Trail. The Skyline Trail, if you're not familiar with it, is an elevated boardwalk. It kind of follows a ridge on the south side of the Big Sauble River, and you get some of the most spectacular views in the park looking out over the southern dunes. It's an elevated wooden boardwalk. It's about a half-mile long by the time you put together all of the different flights of stairs. And in the 80s, it was built with help from the National Guard. The Michigan National Guard brought helicopters in here. They hauled supplies up on top of the ridge. I think you can see a ranger or two in the bushes there that's either running up or running down to help them unload the materials. And then the rangers and the guard built the existing boardwalk. And, it's a boardwalk with a lot of stairs. Like I said, it's got some great views. It's one of the more popular trails in the park. It's 40 some years old now. It's really not up to code anymore. It was at the time, but not today. And staff-wise, have been having to spend a lot of time repairing it. And so we're thinking that now is a good chance for us to get this rebuilt, and then also to try to incorporate some handicap accessible components to it. With the number of stairs, it's going to be really difficult, to meet the elevations needed to get to the top. But we're looking at some other spots, like spur trails off of lower sections of the Skyline Trail, that we might be able to, remove some trees, put a boardwalk in and an overlook that will still allow someone who can't climb those steps, can't get to the top of the Skyline Trail, the opportunity to look out over the dunes and look out over the Lake Michigan to get a similar experience. So this year we received the money to do the design work, and we've hired the surveyors and the design team, and we're hoping that they'll give us some good ideas on how we can proceed with that. And then this one I almost hate to bring up if anyone's been to any of the coffee with the staff, because we've probably been talking about this for 10 years, and it keeps getting kicked down the road a little bit. But we're looking at the issues that we have with parking, with the traffic flow, with the way our visitors move through the park, and the really, really long delays that occur at the entrance to the park. We've all been there, we've all been sitting in those, and it just sometimes seems to take forever to get into the park. So the biggest pinch point for us is, at the entrance booth. I was looking through photos and I grabbed a picture from like mid-1970s. Same thing is happening as 2015 to the left. That's a narrow spot. There's wetlands on either side. It's kind of vertical drop-offs. There's really not a lot of space. Couple that with pedestrians and bicycles coming down the highway. It's a pretty tough spot. Traffic moves slow and it takes a while to get in. So we're gonna look and see what we can do about that. The Lake Michigan entrance to the parking lot. These pictures were taken on a slow day, and you can see we've got bicyclists, pedestrians, motorcycles, vehicles, all within a few minutes, trying to navigate a roadway that's about the width of 1.5 actual lanes. We're kind of hemmed in a bit by the dunes, but we're working with Eagle, which was a former DEQ, see what we can do there. And we're hoping that we can improve the pedestrian access to Lake Michigan, because that brings us to kind of the third spot is, our bike paths. We would love to see people, instead of driving to the beach, bike to the beach or hike to the beach along our paths. And what we currently do now is have the bike paths dump you off into a parking lot, which again, this was this afternoon. It's a pretty slow day. There are already 2 vehicles, actually driving here to look out for. Imagine this during a very busy day. We kind of dump you out into a parking lot and don't tell you how to get to Lake Michigan. So we're going to look to see what we can do to improve that whole entrance flow and make the experience for people getting into the park better, make the experience for people moving around the park better. So those are like the really big projects that we're doing. And then we've got some smaller things that we're doing more in-house or partnering with local organizations. Campsite repairs, you saw the picture of the flooding from earlier. Even though the lake levels have dropped that 14 inches, it really last year pointed out where we needed to make some improvements on our campsites. So we've been doing a lot of work on raising up some of the campsites, hopefully helping with the water drainage issues that we saw. I don't know if you've ever been to the Hamlin Lake changing courts. They definitely were not the nicest. Things are kind of scary. They had a severe bat problem. We've been addressing that issue and did some remodeling this winter of the change courts, so they're much brighter. The men's side didn't even have doors on them. So we were able to get some doors made from some lumber that we had left around the park. So I think you'll be quite surprised at how nice those look when you come this summer. And then, like Patrick mentioned earlier, one of the biggest projects and one that we're really excited about is, working with the Friends of Ludington State Park to put in this accessible canoe and kayak launch on Hamlin Lake. It's going to be located just to the north of the boat launch. There was an old fishing pier there that really didn't see a lot of activity because it was a horrible place to fish. The water was way too shallow. So we removed that. We're taking advantage of the existing walkway there. And, the Friends did some fundraising and received a partnership grant from our Parks and Rec division to move forward with this. And hopes are that we'll have this in by the middle of June. And, the nice thing about this, it's sold as a handicap accessible canoe kayak launch, but really it's available for anyone who wants to use it. It makes getting in and out of the water a lot easier. I've used them up at the Boardman River. And, it's just a really nice feature, and we're hoping that that'll get people out to enjoy those paddling opportunities in the park. So that's kind of what I have right now. Give you an idea of what we're doing there. I guess one other thing I didn't have some slides in there, and it's working with one of our partners. I just didn't have any slides because we haven't installed it yet. But the Mason County Sheriff's Office a couple of years ago, after we had the 2 drownings here at Ludington State Park, that November, for their No Shave November, they have a contest where they can have beards and mustaches if they pay a fine each day. And that organization raised $3,200 that they donated to the Friends of Ludington State Park to go for water safety improvements. And one of the things that we're going to be doing this upcoming year, we've already purchased a sign, we just haven't installed it yet, is we've got an LED sign that'll be right at that Lake Michigan beach entrance. It's going to be solar powered, hopefully, and it very clearly is going to state the beach conditions. No worrying about trying to see a flag, what color the flag is or where the flag is on the beach. It's really going to be kind of in your face to say, as you're pulling into that beach parking lot, if the conditions are poor, it's going to say, red, please, no swimming, green, still use caution. But we just really thought that our beach flag system may not be visible enough. And so we really want to thank the Mason County Sheriff's Office for, their generous donation to hopefully make the beach area safer. So. All right, Patrick.
If people have questions, if you want to put them in chat or unmute, I will ask Jim. I was listening at the very beginning, and I don't know if you referenced the total number of visitors last year. I know, and having numerous conversations with you, you always would say that the park targeted average or whatever was 800,000, and then last year with the increase, it was 890,000, based on park reservation data that you shared in terms of 30% increase across the state. What's your guesstimate as to how many visitors the Ludington State Park will see in 2021?
I'm thinking it's probably going to be somewhat similar to last year. I mean, there might be a bit of an increase. People are still visiting. We've seen a big increase even this spring. Over spring break, we nearly filled the Cedar Campground. It's 100 campsites there, and it came close to filling, which that's unheard of for us. So I think we'll gain some attendance in those shoulder seasons. The closure of the Beechwood campground is probably going to negatively impact that, because that's 150 campsites where we won't have visitors. But I think we're expecting a really, really busy summer.
Are there any questions? I know Nancy posted, and Jim, I don't know if you can see the chat, but
I see the chat. I'm sorry.
She noted that she was thanking for the bathroom update, and she looks forward to seeing it. She just wished it was going to be like the cedar one with big windows, mirror on the side wall, and brightness to it. She really dislikes darker bathrooms. And so is the model that you showed when, some of the mentioned compared to cedar, how would you contrast the two? Is it?
Well, it's definitely not. I mean, the cedar bathrooms, those were from the Clean Michigan initiative. Those were like early 2000s type bathrooms, and I mean they were pretty plush, really, really nice bathrooms, but also extremely expensive to build. I'm guessing probably today. It'd be another $500,000, $600,000 at least, for that particular building. And they had a lot of problems, headaches for us to maintain them. The new design is simpler. It's very clean. There are definitely going to be a lot of mirrors in there. We're kind of going back to some of the basics with some of the components, like the walls are going to be bright painted cinder block, but nice looking. I've always been really impressed by them. I think you'll be pretty happy with them. They are going to be very bright too. Lots of good lighting in there. Unlike, if you've been to some of the buildings in Pines, it can get a little dim in some of the corners there, and that's not the case with these buildings.
There is a question from Sam in Pentwater. Is Lake Stride race still on for June 12th?
Hey, Sam, long time no see. I knew Sam from Pentwater when I lived down there. Yeah, as far as I know, they're still planning on moving forward with that unless there are some restrictions. That's done through Ludington. We did receive some information from them recently about trying to move forward with that. So we expect they're going to do that.
Do you want to comment on the two, and I don't know if they're totally confirmed, but the Michigan, I want to say Michigan Adventure, but Mark's race in October and then potentially the other Odyssey swim?
Sure. So we actually do have two potentially big events that are going to take place at the park this fall. Originally, they're planning on doing them in the spring, but with the COVID restrictions, they decided to err on the side of caution and push it back. So you may remember a few years ago, 2 years in a row, we had Michigan Adventure Race came here and did an orienteering style event in Ludington State Park, where I think they had maybe 40, 50 different tags throughout the park. People could, using maps, run around, stamp their books from the different locations. There's a paddling component to it. So we're going to be going forward with that again. Mark Van Tongeren with Michigan Adventure Race. He was up here just recently checking out some of his locations for the orienteering spots. So it's a great group. They also, that group partners with the Friends of Ludington State Park for volunteers and then provides a donation in lieu of, I guess, paying them to work that event. And then we have another event, and it's a first-time event for us, and it's called Michigan Odyssey, and it's a it's a run swim is what they call it. So it's an event where people will be running. They'll start in the city of Ludington, run north, and there'll be some off-trail components, off-road components, and then there'll be some swimming. I think they're going to swim up the length of the Big Sauble River to the dam, get out, run some more, hop into Hamlin Lake. So it's kind of an event where it's a mix of swimming and running. And that's going to be happening this fall as well.
And when Jim mentioned in terms of the partnership with Michigan Adventure Race, Michigan Adventure Race also has a bicycling event in June, actually two of them. One is a cross the state of Michigan. They're starting out on Lake Huron and riding west and ending in Ludington. And the other one is a 100-mile race starting in Ludington and returning to Ludington. And the Friends of Ludington State Park are the local nonprofit partner for that, as well as their race or event in October. We will have it links on our webpage to their webpage, And if you're interested in volunteering with Michigan Adventure Race, you can sign up on their website. And all you need to do is indicate that you're doing so as part of the Friends of Ludington State Park. And as Jim mentioned, a donation is then made. Once you complete your volunteer activity, a donation is made by Michigan Adventure Race to the Friends of Ludington State Park. So we encourage you, if you're interested in helping to volunteer with them, that would be great for you to do so. There is a question, can a speed bump be installed on the road into Pines? Many vehicles drive too fast, entering, going up the hill and around the curve. People walk and bike through that area.
Always a possibility. It's something we'll have to talk over internally to see if that's, if it'll negatively affect, the operations a little bit. We've heard from some of our campers that the speed bumps we have, some of them at least, are a little bit too steep. So we might have to go with a gentler one. They're not good for the big campers, but that's something we might be able to try. Thanks for the suggestion there. Yeah, the speed is always an issue in this park. Even along the main park road, we've installed 3 speed bumps, and it seems to surprise people the first time they hit it. And then after that, they slow down right for the speed bump and then pick things up again. And so it's always a concern with us.
Are there any other questions? Jim, can you stop sharing your screen for me?
I can. I think, yes.
Any other questions this evening? I'm not seeing any in chat. I just want to remind you again, if you're interested in the Friends of Ludington State Park, becoming a member or upcoming events or making a donation, you can do so at the Friends of the Ludington State Park website. There is, as I mentioned, under that donate tab, a page regarding the track chair. And as Jim was talking about the state park and the Big Sabo Lighthouse and the 2-mile walkout and bus days and so forth, I think a track chair at the Ludington State Park, based on the 800,000, 900,000 annual visitors, as well as just that lighthouse walk, in terms of being able to enhance access for individuals that have mobility issues through the use of a track chair, will make it extremely attractive for the Ludington State Park. And conversely, for those individuals that are colorblind, I just cannot imagine being back on Hamlin Lake and looking off one of those boardwalks and not being able to appreciate the full breadth of colors in the fall. It'll be great to have that type of device available as well. So we are past 8 o'clock. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us. We're planning tentatively to do some of these sessions again next winter. We probably will have Ellen do a session on the history of the Ludington State Park, and we'll probably ask Splika to do an update on the lighthouse, along with Jim doing a state of the state park address again next year. So thank you for joining us this evening. Jim, thank you for your great update and excellent presentation, as other people are noting in the comments. A recording of tonight's session will be made available on the Friends of Ludington State Park website, and those of you that participated tonight and registered for this will get an email when that video has been posted. And we may actually, Jim, since you did such a great job in terms of an overview, we may actually do 2 videos and try to really your general overview that you did at the beginning, share that widely, because it was a great overview for individuals that may not have the in-depth knowledge regarding the Ludington State Park. Lots of facts that you covered this evening. So again, thank you, Jim, for all you do, and the staff, the state park. It's an amazing park that we all love and enjoy and benefit from having access to. So thank you and the staff for all they do on a daily basis to make the park what it is.
All right, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity, and I hope to see everyone this summer. Come on out to one of the coffees if you can make it, if we can have them. Otherwise, have a great evening, and we'll see you this summer.